Rachel Haynes from CTV. I'd like to ask you a little bit more about what you're saying about this matching the U.S. deal or what U.S. has put on Canada. In fact, it's only matching the goods under CUSMA, but in other areas, we're not matching the U.S. at all. They have 50% tariffs on our steel and aluminum products, but we only have 25% tariffs in return. Are you going to raise those tariffs to match that?
We're not raising those today. We've matched the tariffs on autos, similar structure as the U.S. We do have a difference between our tariff on U.S. steel and our tariff on U.S. aluminum. Those are part of the intensive discussions that we're underway right now.
Is that something that you'd look at in the future? And also,
we will look at. I'll give you three questions. I'll give you a short answer to that, which is that we'll look at everything. I mean, we look at our industry both in terms of how we support their retooling, their investment in the industries, liquidity for today, helping their workers, buying Canadian, diversifying markets, but of course trade policy, including with the United States, is part of that. But we're engaged in discussions with the United States about exactly those sectors. And that's what we want to advance to the benefit of our workers and our economy.
And I'll make this extra follow-up very quickly. You're talking about this putting us in a good position in the next phase, presumably the CUSMA negotiations, but as other people have pointed out, we've already folded on the digital services tax, we're taking away these counter tariffs. How is this a position of strength going into those negotiations?
We're in a position, first off, I'm in the negotiations, so I have a sense of how the negotiations are. This puts us, and directly the conversation the President and I had yesterday, is that we'll be following up in short order, he and I, on the progress on our discussions. So the teams are engaged, are re-engaging on this. This helps accelerate that. Look, but it's a negotiation, but there's no guarantees in these things. But the basis of this is we're matching what the United States has done. Okay, we're matching what the United States has done. We're putting ourselves in a position which is consistent with CUSMA, right? And that vote clears away an issue with the U.S. The longer it goes on where we're not matching what the U.S. has done. In the U.S., the carve-out, what they call the USMCA carve-out, but effectively is this free trade for 85%. They just made that official 2 weeks ago. They just made that official with the executive order. So we're responding to that. It's obviously, in our judgment, the right thing to do, so we can focus in on those strategic exclusively, and also be consistent with CUSMA, where there is going to be, CUSMA in a very different trade environment is going to look different, and what we need to do is to make sure we're focusing in areas that where it's the mutual benefits are very clear. So in other words, the arrangements in strategic sectors are mutually reinforcing. They're mutual benefits. So the agreement supports it, but the economics drives it. And that's the way we do it. Thank you.
So we have time for two more questions. One will be English, one will be French. We'll start with Olivia Stefanovic from CBC.
Do you have any assurances from the Americans that this will kickstart negotiations? Did President Trump specifically say that in his conversation with you?
Yes.
And what do you say to premiers who have called for stronger retaliatory measures against the U.S.?
Yeah, let me say something general and then I'll be more specific, which is that I want to salute the premiers, and particularly those premiers. Some provinces are affected more than others because of the sectoral nature of these tariffs. And I want to salute those premiers for the collaborative way we've been able to work together and the focus on the workers and the businesses themselves. And there's a combination of support for the workers and businesses, such as we provided in the steel sector, liquidity, capital, by Canadian at the federal level, at the provincial level, across, and working in collaboration, for example, in steel with the province of Ontario. In the end, what we all want is to make sure for those strategic sectors that they get fair access to U.S. market. And what we're doing, again, is matching what the U.S. is doing. That's fair. Fair to match what they've done. And it puts us in a better position to focus in on exactly those sectors where for it. So sometimes, you know, to go back to the earlier question, yeah, you drop the gloves in the first period. You know, when you're late in the game, dropping the gloves and taking the extra penalty might not be the best thing to do, and that's the situation we're in.
And our last question will come from Olivier Boisé from TVA.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier ministre.
Hello,
Vous êtes
Prime
on a
Minister.
la meilleure entente du
You
monde
say
avec
that
les
we have the
États-Unis.
best agreement in the world with the United States, but
Mexico,
Mexico also has CUSMA, and they got a 90-day period where the tariffs would not apply. So it seems their situation is better. Well,
C'est le calcul du gouvernement du Mexique que
the
elle,
Mexican government's
le
calculation
Mexique est dans le deuxième meilleur.
is that Mexico has the second best trade deal with the United States. They made their own calculation, and I agree with that.
C'est la raison est quel est le montant des exportations.
And the reason for that is the amount of exports under CUSMA. In Canada,
97%.
it's more than 97%. Those are exports
Sauf des secteurs.
going to the
Dans
United
l'accord avec
States.
l'ASEAN, sauf dans les secteurs.
Those are the ones that are under
Deuxième
CUSMA.
point. Oui, comme tu viens de
Second,
dire,
as I just stated
Madame,
to this journalist,
nous recommençons les négociations.
we are restarting our negotiations now.
Intensifier les négociations.
We are intensifying those negotiations, and that was the basis of my conversation yesterday with President Trump.
Selon le compte rendu avec le président.
Now,
de
based
la
on what was
situation
said
en Ukraine,
about your
est-ce que
discussion,
vous avez discuté d'un
you
rôle
did
éventuel
talk
pour le
about
Canada
Ukraine,
dans
and did you
les sécurités
refer
qui ont
to
été
a possible
développées à
role for
Washington
Canada
en votre absence? Puis
uh,
quel pourrait
in that
être le rôle
regard, and what might the Canadian role be? Well, it's a very delicate question and an important question. I did have conversations with the coalition of the willing. In other words, the UK, France, Italy, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and a number of other European countries.
Nous avons fait de préparation
And
avec cette coalition
with that coalition,
de garantie de sécurité.
we have made plans in terms of security guarantees.
Elle participe
The Canadian Armed Forces are part of every discussion with the coalition, including discussions with the United States.
Nous sommes en train de
So we are in the process
développer
of
l'aspect tangible
developing the tangible aspects of those security guarantees, but what is clear is that we start with the Ukrainian Armed Forces
Il faut avoir
and Canadian forces, but
sur la terre
there have to be security guarantees on land, air, and sea.
que sera le rôle du Canada.
What will Canada's role be, or the role of other countries, with a backstop from the United States? Now that is the question. But I have had conversations about this, including with President Trump in the last few weeks. We are making progress.
On a point final.
And a final point, if I
Il
may.
y a une occasion
Now we have an opportunity.
d'arrêter
An opportunity
ce guerre.
to put an end to this horrible and unjustified and illegal
Causé
war
absolument par
caused solely by Mr. Putin.
Et les garanties de sécurité, c'est une
And the security guarantees are one essential aspect of achieving peace, of course.
verra
But we'll see.
des États-Unis.
There's a role for the United States, critical role for the United States. There's a role for Canada, which is also very important.
Merci.